my name is Taya Thomas. I live in Cordova, Alaska. The name of my company is Royal Ocean Kelp Company. And my partner and I started a kelp farm 2 years ago, growing sugar kelp and ribbon kelp. And the whole idea was to grow kelp for food. Kelp can be used for all sorts of amazing things. It truly is an amazing plant. It can be used for biofuels. It can be used as an industrial additive in everything from ice cream to shampoo as a thickener, but it can also be used as in food. And so when Shay asked me if he could be an intern with my company, I was very excited because I knew that Shay loved to bake. And so I thought this would be a wonderful time where we could produce kelp powder and Shay could try it in several different recipes that he normally bakes. So what we have done twice since Shay has been here, we have gone out to the kelp farm, which takes us about a half an hour. It's outside of Cordova in Windy Bay, which is on Hawkins Island. We have harvested sugar kelp and ribbon kelp. We have brought it back to my warehouse where, well, first we blanched it in the kitchen, which is a process of dipping the kelp into boiling water and then setting it in a colander to drain. And then we took that kelp and we put it in just regular home dehydrators. And so we had 2 dehydrators going and eventually came up with this dry kelp, which is very crispy and tough. And then it took a double process to actually grind it. First, we put it in the food processor, which grinds it into kind of a rough flake, tough flake. And then I have found through kind of my experimenting that the only thing that was strong enough to grind it to powder was a coffee grinder, because you know coffee beans are pretty tough and it grinds it to a really fine powder. So then after the food processor chopped up the dried kelp, we would put it in small batches in a coffee grinder and eventually came up with kelp powder. And we had a tote of about this much kelp that eventually, after drying it, blanching it, and grinding it, came in to be about 2 cups of kelp powder. So that was kind of part of the whole process, part of the whole learning process. So anyway, and then Shay started baking with the kelp powder, making several different recipes, which has been really fun. Everything from pizza dough to bread to oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. And it's fun. Lots of different people have tried them and given him their review of his kelp products. One thing I've learned from this program is that you need to have an idea. So I'm really glad that Shay, grasped onto this idea of making the kelp powder and then baking with it, because it wasn't just enough to just go out there and work on the kelp farm. That's just work. I mean, he needed an idea to follow through to do with the kelp, which he very much has done. And it's been fun for me to watch him do this. And yeah.
Hello, my name is Shay Davis, and I did my internship in Cordova, Alaska, to work on a kelp farm with Royal Ocean Kelp. I wanted this internship because I really enjoy being in this place. I have been interested in mariculture, which is like agriculture on the water, which also includes fish farming, for a long time, because it is a future focused in sustainable focused industry. While I'm out here, I learned that kelp has a greater carbon sequestration than trees and could be a huge benefit to climate resilience projects around the globe. We even worked with a company called Greenwave, which measures carbon sequestration of kelp forests along the West Coast, and I think in other parts of the world. On top of that, kelp is an incredibly healthy food source, providing vital vitamins that many Americans don't normally take in. This is why I wanted to experiment with kelp baking. I thought it would be a fun way to incorporate more nutrition into my baking. This came out to create tasty and green, and I mean actually green, desserts like kelp carrot cake, bread, cookies, and pizza. I mainly experimented with the amount of kelp flour to normal flour and whether that would be good or not. and how I could create an additive to incorporate into any baking. I found that most forms of like robust baking, like really flavorful, maybe not as delicate as like pastries, aren't affected by adding kelp flour to it. This means that we can benefit from kelp while still maintaining a really sweet treat. There have been many cool and more interesting challenges to this internship. The part that was the most fun for me would be physically going out to the water to harvest kelp. It was really fascinating and taught me something I'd never really seen before. I don't think many people think about harvesting kelp. We actually literally went out there and I was cutting off pieces of kelp into a bucket that we then brought home and dried and then ground up. This internship has made me consider not just my personal future, but also the future of the planet and the people on it. Right now, our farming techniques are harmful to the environment. They use terrible pesticides and chemicals to produce the most food, which has been advantageous for us, but we really need to move forward towards a more sustainable food production method. This has been known in other countries for years, but it's only just beginning to be accepted by the American people. Japan and other Asian countries have been eating kelp for centuries, whereas the Europeans have secretly been adding it to everyday products. Kelp is a great example of something that's healthy and not just helpful to us, but the planet. It is part of the future in food. Thank you.